All right, let's be real for a second. When I say the word grammar, what pops into your head? For a lot of us, it's dusty old textbooks, right? And tons of red ink. But what if that whole way of thinking is just wrong? Today, we're going to dig into a massive shift in how we teach grammar, moving it from this list of boring rules to what it should be, a powerful tool for actually, communicating.
I mean, does the phrase grammar class still send a little shiver down your spine? Yeah? You're not alone. It's those memories, right? Endless drills, memorizing rules that had nothing to do with how people actually talk. If any of that sounds familiar, you're in the right place, because we're about to see how that old approach is being completely flipped on its head.
Okay, so this really breaks down the before and after. On one side, you've got the old school way, isolated drills, memorizing a bunch of rules, and this focus on grammatical forms, plural. And that S is a bigger deal than it sounds. It meant treating grammar like a bunch of separate, disconnected pieces. The new way, it's all about integration. It's about discovering the patterns for yourself and focusing on form, singular, as it pops up naturally when you're trying to communicate something. The goal here isn't just to be correct, it's to find that sweet spot where you can be both fluent and accurate.
So how do we actually do this? How do we make this leap? Well, it all starts with a whole new philosophy. And look, this isn't about just tossing out all the rules. Not at all. It's about building a student's awareness of the language in a way that's way more natural and honestly, way more effective. Let's dive into the core ideas behind this.
Okay, the first big idea is called focus on form. And what this means is you're not stopping a great conversation dead in its tracks to give a 20-minute lecture on the past tense. No way. Instead, it's about gently, skillfully pointing out a grammar point right in the middle of a real activity, just when it's most relevant. The key is you keep the conversation flowing, but you help the learner notice and tweak their language as they go. It's like a coach giving a quick tip during a game, not in a classroom.
And that leads us perfectly into the next huge concept, which is noticing. It sounds so simple, right? But believe me, this is a total game changer. A researcher named Richard Schmidt had this breakthrough idea. You literally cannot learn a piece of language that you haven't first consciously noticed. Your brain just has to see it to register it as something new or different before it can even start to learn it. So the teacher's job isn't just to tell you stuff, it's to create these situations where you have that aha moment and see the pattern for yourself.
And that's exactly where consciousness raising fits in. Think of it this way. Instead of just handing over the answer, you give them the clues. You show them a few examples, a few sentences, and you ask, hey, what's going on here? What's the pattern? You're basically turning them into little language detectives. They get to figure out the rule for themselves, and when you discover something on your own, man, it sticks with you in a much deeper way.
All right, so we've got the philosophy down. Focus on form, noticing, and consciousness raising. That's the why. But theory is one thing, right? What does this stuff actually look like when the rubber hits the road in a classroom? Let's talk application. Let's see this in action.
I love this idea right here. Grammar should be taught not as a set of abstract rules, but as a resource for conveying meaning effectively. That just hits the nail on the head. We have to completely reframe what grammar is. It's not this gatekeeper, this barrier you have to get past. No, it's your toolkit. Every single grammar rule is a different tool you can use to say what you mean with more clarity, more style, more power. That's the real goal.
So look at these activities. Role plays, storytelling, collaborative projects. What do they all have in common? They all have a real goal. It's not just practice the past tense. No, it's solve this problem or get this missing information. For example, in what's called an information gap activity, you have to ask questions correctly because you genuinely need the answer from your partner. The grammar isn't the point of the exercise, it's the tool you need to use to complete the task. See the difference? It's huge.
Okay, so naturally, when people are actually trying to communicate and use the language, they're going to make mistakes. Of course they are. And you know what? That's awesome. Seriously. In this way of thinking, mistakes aren't failures. They are super valuable clues. They're opportunities to learn. But, and this is a big but, that doesn't mean you jump on every single error. The real skill is knowing which mistakes to focus on and how to do it.
And this is a really important distinction to make. We've got two kinds of errors. First, you have global errors. These are the big ones. They're the mistakes that totally break down communication. The other person just doesn't understand what you're trying to say. Those, yeah, they're high priority. But then you have local errors. This might be getting a verb ending wrong or using the wrong article, but the meaning still gets across. The listener understands you. These are way lower priority. You might not even correct them at all, especially if the goal is just to get the person talking freely.
So when you do decide it's time to correct an error, you've got a bunch of different tools. For instance, there's something called a recast, which is super subtle. If a student says, I go to the store yesterday, you just naturally reply, oh, you went to the store yesterday? Cool, what'd you get? You're just modeling the right way to say it without making a big deal. But then, at other times, you might want to elicit the correction. You could pause and say, I to the store yesterday, and let them figure out the mistake. It all depends on the situation and what you're trying to achieve at that moment.
Okay, let's pull all of this together. If you remember just one thing from all of this, let it be this. We have to fundamentally shift our mindset. Grammar is not a collection of rules that need to be policed. It's a tool. It's a resource. It's something to be used.
So here's your game plan, your path forward. Number 1, shift your focus. Get away from isolated rules and move toward integrated awareness. Number 2, always teach in context. Use tasks that have a real purpose. Number 3, make mistakes productive. Use them as chances to refine, not to discourage. And finally, number 4, empower your students. The whole point is to turn grammar into the personal tool for expression.
And that really brings us to the final big question for you. It doesn't matter if you're a teacher or a learner yourself. How are you going to take this idea and run with it? How will you help turn grammar from this scary rulebook into what it was always meant to be, a creative, powerful tool that helps us connect with each other?